Okay, everybody, welcome to the final part of the Cashmerette Upton Dress SewALong View B. So we have taken care of kind of the preliminary parts and making sure that our darts are all in place, our necklines, our arm size have all been stay stitched. Again, that was excuse me, a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along here, along your V, along your arm side, also for the back necklines as well. So what I want you to do now, this is pretty simple, so I'm not going to show this part on camera, is attach your, these are your back bodice pieces up here. Attach your back waistband and make sure your notches are matching. And then what you're going to do for your back waistband is go ahead and press the seam up. So once you have attached everything, press your seam up on the back waistband. For your front waistband, it's going to be the same thing on the front bodice piece. You are going to attach your front waistband to the front bodice piece, and then you are going to press the seam up this way. And then what we're going to do, now the pattern does not call for stay stitching the shoulder seams, and you may not necessarily need to depending on the fabric that you're using, but this is, I think I've said, a little bit of a lighter weight, and it has some linen in it. And so I am going to use, and I have mentioned this several times on my channel before, I am going to use the Emma Seabrook woven stay tape, and I'm just going to put some of that on the wrong side, of course, of the fabric, because the next step after you've ironed up your seam allowances is to attach the shoulder seams, and these are your outer pieces, of course, your shoulders to your shoulder seams at the front and back bodice. So once I get there, I'll show you what it looks like with this stay tape. Very easy, it's iron on, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so what I'm showing you for the outer pieces, you will do the exact same thing for the lining pieces. So make sure your waistbands have been attached, pressed up. Everything is same thing, mirroring the inner and the outer. And so now when you attach the shoulders, and here's the stay tape. Again, you may not need to use this at all. I'm just taking extra precautions, and remember, all of this will be raw on the inside because it will be lined. Excuse me. But go ahead and sew at the shoulder pieces and then press. And again, you're going to repeat all of this for your lining pieces. So go ahead and attach, stitch, and then press for also your lining pieces. And then we get to do the fun part with attaching the main body to the lining pieces. Okay, so some of the fun part is starting to begin. All right, so lay your bodice exterior pieces out flat, right side up. Then you're going to lay your lining pieces right side down, and then what you're going to do is pin all around the neckline and all around the armholes here on both sides. And then I'll be right back once that's all done. Okay, everything is pinned. As you can tell, this is my neckline is pinned, and my arm side is pinned on both sides. And so now you're going to stitch these two pieces together, and then you're going to trim the seam allowance by 1/4 inch. And then do remember, I don't know if you can see my mark right there, it's that purple mark right there. Leave a 1 inch gap here on both sides. This is the back piece, so you're going to stitch 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, trim down to 1/4 inch. Now when you get down to the front bodice, you're going to pivot at this point. So as you're sewing, leave your needle down here, pivot, turn your work, and then continue on up the other end. Then once you have trimmed all of this down by down a 1/4 of an inch, your seam allowance. And then you're going to clip into that V that was created here, a 1/4 of an inch, which if you did your stay stitching is really to that stay stitching line. So just so you can see, right in there is where you're going to clip, and that gives hopefully if it's done correctly, should lay really nice. And then we are going to turn this inside out, and I'll show you that next. Okay, so you have attached, you've sewn around your neckline, attaching the outer and the lining, and you have sewn around the neckline as well as the armholes. And then remember, you clipped into the V. If you're doing the V-neck, you clipped into that V, not through the stitching. And now we're going to turn this inside out. Okay, so you have your, I'm just doing one side so you can see. Here's your back pieces together, here's your front piece together. And so what you're going to do is reach through the front piece here, and you're going to grab, pinch your fingers through. You can use a point turner as a tip that was in the pattern, but what you're going to do is, what I just usually do is I'm just kind of drawing it up here, and I'm just gonna start pulling it through. Did you see? Just start pulling it through all the way, pinching it through till your back is pulled through the front. And then you will have, and you do this to the other side, and then you will have both pieces together. Very easy to do, but I just want to show the one side. You're going to repeat this for the other side as well. So now that you have everything turned out, you will notice for me, I did keep the white for my front lining, and I self-lined my back. That's just what I did on my pieces. Cut all your loose strings. But what you're going to do is you're going to press the bodice, slightly rolling the side seam, rolling the seam to the lining. So just slightly, hopefully you can see that, you're just slightly rolling the seam to the lining. And then you're going to press all of this all together. And then, let me get this straightened out here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your outer pieces and you're going to make sure everything is matching at the seam. And you're going to stitch all the way your lining pieces and your bodice pieces together. So make sure all of your side seams and everything are matching. And then you're going to stitch these side seams together. And I will show you what that looks like when I get back. Okay, so once you've sewn your sides together, as you can see here on both sides, now you're going to turn everything right side out. Which you'll see here looks good. We are almost at the finish line. Cut any loose threads you see. I have a few loose threads, but you see how everything is looking. So now you have a completed bodice. Now what you want to do is give everything a good press. And then from there, we're going to attach, yay, our skirt to our bodice. We are almost at the finish line. But go ahead, give it a really good press. Make sure everything is pressed really well. And then grab your skirt piece, and then we're going to attach it all. Okay, so my skirt during the time of the SewALong, has had a full day to drop if it's gonna drop, and I must say it has not. So okay, maybe I didn't need to do that, but it was an extra, and you know, it's fine. It all worked out. It is a linen mix, but because I've sewn with linen before and had it grow, I just wanted to make sure, even though this wasn't 100% linen, but that's okay. So let's go attach our skirt to our bodice, or our bodice to our skirt. So the first thing you want to do, lay your skirt flat, right side out. So here's the front. Remember, I color blocked on mine. So this is my center front and my side fronts. And then, of course, here's the back. And so you just lay everything out like this. And then we're going to put our bodice pieces, making sure the front is here of your bodice, the front bodice piece, right sides together. So I'm going to slip that over here, and then you're going to pin it all the way around, and you're only pinning the shell. So you're only pinning the shell of your bodice to this piece, your skirt piece. And I will show you what that looks like soon as it's done. Okay, this looks a little bunchy, but remember our skirt was right side up, our bodice piece right side down. Here is our front, and you're only pinning the shell to the skirt. And you're going to pin all the way around your notches. Make sure your side seams are matching. I've made a couple errors in other versions where my side seams weren't matching, and it may not be perfect, but get it as perfect as you can, and then pin all the way around. See, here's my back piece, right? All the way around. And you're going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and our bodice will be to our skirt. I'll show you what it looks like once it's all sewn together. Okay, so here is our bodice is attached to our skirt. Now for me, I can already tell I probably should have used, I can see it through this fabric. I'm not sure if you can tell, I probably should have used my white knit interfacing for the band. And I can tell both of these fabrics are quite see-through, so I am definitely going to have to wear a slip underneath mine. So just keep that in mind when you do pick your fabric. And I'm also, well, I'll talk about that towards the end, how I'm gonna have to, I was planning to use bias binding at the bottom, and actually it doesn't matter now. I'll probably just fold under and do a narrow hem at the bottom, and it's gonna be see-through. You're gonna be able to see my lining, but we'll get to that. So yeah, here comes the dreaded task of putting in the zip. So let's get started. Okay, so here's my zipper, my invisible zip. I've taken it out of the pack, and I will say my process is slightly different than how it's described in the instruction booklet, just because it just took me a couple years to figure out how to do an invisible zip. So let's just cross our fingers that this turned out how I showed you in part 1. So anyway, I'm just gonna iron out some of these wrinkles. Kind of a hot iron, but not too hot. And then I'm going to unzip this and press the teeth away from the tape, using this warm iron, not a hot iron, because you don't want to melt the teeth. But I'll show you what that looks like soon as I open this up and then press it. So I've done one side of the zipper. I've pressed this flat. As you can tell, you see how the teeth are sticking up. I'm going to press this flat, like this side is flat. Okay, so after looking at the instructions just a little bit more, I'm just going to follow what the instructions say. So here, let me move this back. So here is your back pieces together, right? This is your bodice. This is the skirt. Move your lining piece out of the way. Just move it up out of the way. So all you see are the shell of your bodice and the skirt piece. Then I want you to mark from the top here a 1/2 inch and mark. As you can tell, 1/2 inch from the top and mark, because what you're going to do is, so if you're using an invisible zip, this is the right side where the zipper pull is. Yes, you can see that, and it's been pressed open, the coils. So then what you're going to do is flip it over. This is facing up. Go ahead and face it up so you see just how it's looking, right? And here's the top of your zipper teeth. Now flip it over. So now this right side is right side facing with the lining piece. And what you're going to do is line up the top of the teeth. And let me just zoom in so you can see this. That top of the teeth, you're going to line up with that 1/2 inch mark. And what you want to do is, if I didn't see this initially, but go ahead and lay your Wonder Tape down on one side. So let me do that first and then I'll come back. Okay, so what I've done is went ahead and added my double-sided my Wonder Tape, my double-sided Wonder Tape. And so the instructions call for pinning, but for me that just, it gets a little wonky for me. So as I said, remember you started out with your zipper facing right side up. Then you're going to flip it where right sides are touching here, right? And let me just straighten this out. So then once it's right sides down, you have your zipper stop down here all the way up. You're going to take, and at first they're going to be lined up perfectly, right? But that's not how you're going to sew it in. You're going to move this one out of the way, the one closest to you, and you're going to place this zipper at the zipper end at the top where that mark was. Remember we said 1/2 inch down, the teeth should start where that mark is, and you're going to take off the double-sided tape and you're going to tape this all the way down. Okay, so what I've done is stuck everything together. I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to sew right in this ridge, but I'll show you that at the machine. But I went ahead and taped all the way down, put my pin so I see where to stop, and then we're going to go ahead and stitch this side together, and then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. But before we get to that, I will show you how I will sew this on. Okay, so you want to make sure you switch out your zipper foot. So from your regular foot to your zipper foot, your invisible zipper foot, or whatever type of foot you're using. I am using this type of foot. Let me try to zoom in so you can see. It is for putting piping in, but I've noticed when I did do the one successful invisible zip, this worked perfect. And it has this adjustable bar here. And again, I'm sewing on a Brother SE400 machine, but this is what I'm going to use, and this will go right up against where I need it to go. So let me show you what that looks like once I put it in, and we're going to sew the first side of our invisible zip. Okay, so what I've done is go ahead and put my needle down so you can see, and I'm going to zoom all the way as much as I can. Let's see if we can get this to focus. Okay, so you can see where I have put my needle in. I'm not going to be able to record me sewing this because I want to make sure I keep my teeth rolled out of the way. But essentially what you're doing is you're sewing in that ridge where you had pressed open your zipper tape, there's a ridge right in there. You want to sew all the way down to the very end. I will show you what that looks like when I come back. Okay, so I have attached my one side of my invisible zipper. So what I was doing is I was sewing. I was making sure, even though I did press this out, I still made sure my fingertip, I still rolled this section out, because if you can tell, you want to get in that groove right by the teeth, but not into the teeth. That has happened when I was practicing before. Get right up in there. Let me just show you. Right, you're getting right up in that teeth right there. See that stitch? So we're going to use our Wonder Tape and attach the other side of the zipper. Can be a little counterintuitive. If you have a better way or easier way that you install invisible zips, do follow that. I'm just following, adding in a couple extra things that besides what is in the written in the instructions. Okay, so I'm here laying this back out so you can see this is the side you have already attached here. Here's how our zipper is looking. You will notice now the wrong side is facing up, but when you close it, the right side will be facing up. So now we're seeing the right side of our zipper again here. Let me get the zipper pull out the way. So when you close it, you know that once it's closed, those two pieces need to come together. So hopefully not to sound too confusing here. So what you're going to do is turn this piece so the teeth are facing this way, right? So let me just get this situated so you can see. So I have my other side taped down onto my Wonder Tape. This is why I like using Wonder Tape as opposed to pins, because if something shifts or you need to change something, because you do want to make sure that these seams are matching when you zip it up. So what I'm going to do, even though I have it taped, I'm just going to reinforce here with a couple clips and zip this up to make sure that my seams are lining up here. But first thing, you're laying that zipper the same way you did this zipper, because what you're going to see at the bottom is it looking wonky. But once you know it's sewn in right and you close it, it will come out right. So I know that it's counterintuitive, and hopefully I'm explaining this as best I can, but I'm going to go ahead and pin actually these sides in place, zip it up to make sure this is lining up and I don't need to shift this at all. Okay, so I have zipped mine up, and as you can tell, I need to adjust this side because my seams aren't lining up. So I am going to fiddle around with that, get that lined up, making sure everything is lined up at the top. And I can see too how my top isn't lined up either, and it's this side so I'm gonna have to raise this side up so this here can meet, and then my tops will meet at the top as well. And then we're going to sew in the other side. Okay, so here is my invisible zip in, and I will admit I had to tape and untape several times to get my seams to match here at the back because they were not matching. And so take your time with it. Again, if you have a better process, follow that. But my invisible zip is in. I'm excited about it. Now we're going to finish the back seam. I'm going to flip this over so then you can see what the back seam looks like. Okay, so now you have your center back. You need to pin that, and so what she wants you to do is start sewing slightly to the left of, and if I just turn this over, slightly to the left of where your stitching stopped for your zip, and then all the way down 1/2 inch seam allowance, all the way down to the hem, and then serge. Now one of the things I did not do, now it's an afterthought, if you haven't started this part already with the invisible zip, I would probably, because all of this is going to be hidden, right, by the lining, this part up, but this part down will be showing in the dress because it's not lined. I would, before you start attaching the zip, go ahead and serge that seam all the way down so this is clean, because now this is going to be kind of raw for me in here. I'm gonna see, I'm gonna have a quick think about what I will do about that before I stitch this together. But once you have this stitched together, you have your notches are matching up, so you know everything is attached properly. And then go ahead and serge that close, and then you can press that, stitch it closed and then serge, or if you serged it already, stitch it closed, and your back pieces will be together. And then we'll be sewing our bodice lining to the zipper. Okay, so my zipper is in. I've sewn up the center back seam and serged, as you can tell, and at the end of my zip I just created a zipper end essentially out of my exterior fabric just to hide that raw edge, and essentially all I did was cut a 2x2 square, folded it in to the center, pressed it, and then the two ends I also folded in about 1/4 inch, pressed it, and then folded up here like this, and then just stitched all the way around. All right, let's move to sewing the bodice lining to the zipper. Okay, so now we're going to attach our bodice lining to our zipper. Now the thing that you want to do, what I did is go ahead and pin this together. So you have the right side of your lining, and remember my back lining is the same fabric as my exterior fabric, but so you'll see here these right sides together, and what the key is your zipper is in between, sandwiched in between the two pieces. So here's my zipper. You see where I've sewn it to my outer fabric. You're sandwiching, and the teeth are facing, let me just switch here. Your teeth are facing this way. So the teeth are going on the inside. So not they shouldn't be facing this way. They should be facing on the inside. Let me peel this back so you can see. See my zipper teeth? They're facing the inside. And then you're going to pin, and what you're going to do is you're going to pin lining on top of zip again, so it's sandwiched in between the shell and the lining. You're going to use your zipper foot or whatever foot that you had used before and sew close to the teeth. Now before I was able to see close to the teeth because obviously there wasn't any fabric on top. I cannot see that on this side, so what you can do is flip this over and just stitch in the line, that because the zipper is already attached to the exterior, flip it over and stitch in that same line of stitching. That way you know you're getting it close to the zipper, because you can't tell from this side. So flip it over and stitch in that same line of stitching that you stitch on your exterior fabric. Okay, now that your lining is sewn to your lining bodice is sewn to your outer bodice, and your zipper is sandwiched in between, what you're doing here, remember you had that opening here at the top. That was about 1/2 inch here, about an inch here from that little purple mark we made earlier. So what you're going to do is just fold the top part of where your zipper is. Here's your zipper, and where they're joined, you're just going to fold this over ever so slightly, and you're going to finish this seam at the top all the way across. Let me show you that, and I will be right back. Okay, so that is done. So it's just a little bit of piece. If you look at the instructions there at the top of page 2, there is an enhanced photo there in the circle. It's just a little piece that's turned over, and then you stitch from there all the way to where that marking was. That's about 1 inch to close that opening. And our lining and everything is now attached. Now it's time to sew our lining to our shell and hem the skirt. And I will talk about that in a moment. Okay, this is the final part. Now you want to attach your lining. So the instructions say you can do a slip stitch or a stitch in the ditch. So for anybody who follow me, you know I struggle with all of that. And what I will be using is heat bond. And I'm going to place the heat bond in between these 2 layers. And I am going to heat bond my waistband lining piece down first. And then I usually let that sit for a day. And then I'll go back and do a very light slip stitch all the way around. That's how I will do it. And again, because this, I think I mentioned this earlier, I've discovered that this fabric was a little bit more see-through than I thought it was going to be. And so I really don't want the stitching to show on the outside. So I am just going to use a white thread in a couple days and just go back through and stitch. Now for my hem, let me show you what I am going to do with my hem. So for my hem, I'm just going to use this bias binding all the way around. And I thought about it because I was just going to flip it under. You can't really see from here, but in the next clip I'll show you. Either way, if I use this binding or flip this under, you will be able to see that from the outside. So either way, it still will be seen through the fabric because the fabric is more see-through than I initially thought. So the next clip you will see is me showing you the dress and giving you my final thoughts. Okay, so that is it. That is the end of the sew along. I know that invisible zipper insertion was a little bit tricky. Hopefully my explanation was semi-okay. But again, if you have a better way of inserting an invisible zipper that has a lining, go right ahead and do that. There's many ways out here on YouTube. I'm sure people will leave comments and they can leave their references that they have below, or blog posts or anything like that. Leave them in the comments so others can see. But our dress is complete, and it has been raining and I have not been able to go outside to take proper pictures. So I'm going to try this on in just a second so you can see how it looks. And it is looking a little washed out, but here she is completed. Now, like I was saying with the hem, I used, let's see if you can see, yes, I used bias binding on the hem. And like I said, you can see that this fabric that I chose, so it wouldn't have mattered if I turned it under, the seam under, and sewed it down. You're still going to see it through the, and you'll probably be able to tell in the pictures as opposed to me holding it, because I don't know that it's coming across, but I can see it, and I can see it as clear as day. Whether I had rolled this under or like I did attach the binding. So I decided just to attach the binding because either way you were going to see it through the fabric anyway. And then I just switched out to white thread and I did stitch around. Now if I couldn't see through it, I would have taken time to go ahead and do a blind hem stitch, a hand stitch all the way around, just so you couldn't see it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Oh well. But anyway, here is our invisible zip. I do like the way it looks. I wanted to show you the inside and then I will try it on real briefly. So remember I talked about using that heat bond for the inside, and then I will go back in. I usually let my heat bond sit for like a day. I don't know why. I just feel like that does something. Probably does absolutely nothing. And then go back in and do just a really light hand stitch. So see how it looks on the inside? Looks nice and neat. And I don't want, so if I tried to do the stitch in the ditch on the outside. I just prefer for the Upton. Usually I would do that, just go ahead, try to do the whole stitch in a ditch, but with the Upton, for me, it's still nice just to do that really loose hand blind hem stitch, just the hand stitching all the way around. It's not gonna move. I've never had the heat bond shift or move away from the fabric, so probably technically I don't have to do that, but I am gonna do it just real loose all the way around where I added that heat bond, so it will look nice and neat on the inside, and then you won't see any stitching you for sure won't see any stitching on the outside. One of the other things, so here's my invisible zip. One of the things that, remember I was showing you how I had to play with my zipper and shift it around. Well, okay, I got this to zip all the way up, and I shifted, the last time I did it, I was not paying attention, so pay attention. I shifted this side ever so slightly higher than this side, and so it doesn't meet perfectly up at the top, which but that's okay. Again, it's not the end of the world. Although had I paid attention more to my fabric, I would have interlined this, especially for I would have interlined the skirt pieces. Let me clarify. I would have interlined the skirt pieces because obviously the bodice is already fully lined, so you can't see through the bodice, but the skirt, and again, you can't tell through the camera, you can see right through it. And so I'm gonna have to wear a slip underneath. I probably can make me I'll probably buy it. Why spend time making a slip? I am going to probably buy me a white slip because I only have a black half slip, and so I can wear that underneath. That'll be real quick. I can pick that up at Walmart or something like that, and get one that's halfway, that'll cover all of this. I didn't want to necessarily wear black underneath there because just the way that black, and I don't know if you can tell, the way that black interfacing look against that white, against the waistband there, I don't think I want to wear a black slip underneath. So those are my final thoughts. I am going to try this on so you can see how it looks. Sorry again, you will notice probably by the time I can get some good pictures in, I will change the thumbnail out for all of these sew-alongs to me in the dress, taking proper pictures outside in my backyard. But until then, you'll get the thumbnail that you see, and I'll just try it on here briefly, and I will be right back. Okay, so here she is, and of course I wouldn't style it with a hat, but anyway, I just want you to see how it looks on. All of those adjustments. The other adjustment I remembered towards the end that I forgot that I said I remember an adjustment I didn't remember to tell you about. It was the forward shoulder adjustment. Forward shoulder adjustment. And I did link down to the Fit Clinic where I referenced the blog post on how to do that. So that was the only other adjustment I did that I forgot to mention. But see, the sway back, everything back there looks really good. It fits really, really good. I really like it. And so, okay, so yeah, you'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will try to answer right away in the comments as best I can. And yeah, that is it for the sew along. Again, thumbs up this video, share it out, and I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.